Thanks for tuning in to Becoming Something, where we promise to keep the conversation honest and real for young adults in their 20s and 30s. Every moment we live is training for a future moment, and that's why we do this podcast, because we want you to be prepared for everything that life is going to throw at you. Our hope with this podcast is that it would help you become all that God desires you to be. So with that in mind, let's jump right in to this week's episode of Becoming Something.
What's up, podcast world? It's your boy JP in the podcast studio.
Podcast studio. Is that right?
That was nice. Nate too.
Callie, which
Callie.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Dang.
Oh, wow. This is Kathy.
She has the maturity of my
This is
9-month-old
Stop it.
Callie.
This
Not
is
even.
Kathy.
You just called me your daughter's name, and I really don't know how
She's
I
a
feel
baby
about
and poops on herself
Yeah,
and
wow.
drools, and you guys remind me of each other. Kathy, whose polo is better?
that. Okay. Well, yours says Becoming Something, so
That's
I feel
true.
like I should say that, but
Did you-
JP's
did you-
is way cooler.
Oh
Stop.
my gosh!
No!
You're making me stumble. Gosh!
For those of you who are not watching,
Unbelievable.
as I was looking at
Remember
his
the
polo,
time? Remember the
What?
time?
Stop it.
Remember the time,
JP
Kathy?
did
The
chest
best
thing.
one. The
chest-
best outtake of me so ever.
Oh, man.
That was amazing.
I really am still blushing about it.
Did we did we show that at Be So Live?
I think we did, yeah, like last year.
We
Oh,
showed that
really?
part.
I think
don't
so.
know.
Because we did we did like a
Oh,
blooper
my
reel.
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, that was bad.
That was so
What was
funny.
that called that you just did?
What he just did?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm
I
trying not
didn't.
to
I
look at
for what it's
him.
worth, I didn't see anything.
Being
So I don't know what
excited.
you're talking about.
I'm trying not to look at JP.
I mean, just
I'm trying
working
to-
out.
He's doing the thing where you make your chest muscles do stuff.
Is that the same shirt you preached in on Sunday?
Yeah. Totally was sitting on a chair. I just grabbed it, threw it on. That's how I roll.
I was distracted all
Is that the same shirt you do everything in?
Yes.
We have something we have to talk about.
Do you have
today.
like 10 of those at the house?
I wish. I really wish.
He bought all.
What do
10
we
that
have to talk
sold.
about?
We're
The
Nate,
debate?
No,
I really don't know what she's about to
Nate.
say.
We're in the presence of a recording artist. Did
Oh, you guys go pick up
know?
that Forrest Franks album.
What the heck? Matt told me that yesterday. My jaw
It's
dropped.
actually like the craziest rap I think
You've
I've ever
heard it?
Basically
Yes.
go head to head with Connor Price.
Stop it!
Like
How did
what?
this happen? You're on a Forrest Frank song. Like, are you about to like?
Hey, the
leave
talent.
the job and
The
just
talent,
start.
the talent has been sitting here this whole time. Anybody
Been
could have
putting
picked
it
it
out
up.
there?
Could have been
Yeah.
Jake, Shane and Shane. I've tried to, Phil. I mean, anybody could have said,
Did
"Hey,
you pay
come,
him to let you be
come
on it?
rap on my album."
I mean, here. Do you want to hear
Yes.
a piece of it? So it's like, hey, 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 devil, you tried to cover me in sin. Hey, 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 devil, you couldn't win. Hey, hey, hey,
Why are
I'm
you
following
laughing?
Jesus. Hey, 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 let's do it, all of us.
Kathy, you gotta have deviated septum surgery.
I have had it. I've
Are you
had it.
serious?
You've had it?
Did you
Work.
snort
Yes.
before it?
I don't know. I think I
It sounded
snorted
like you were
after.
giving him the beat. Like he's like, "Hey, hey, hey," you're like,
It was so bad, but also how you thought of words. that
Wow.
rhymed
So
so
wait, you've
quickly.
had both of you have had it.
"Yeah."
Is it as painful as he claimed it is?
You sound like you need it.
I do. Yeah, I'm
Not
a
quite,
little sick.
but that's fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't painful for you?
I had it like in high school or college. I don't really remember it.
Everyone I talked to had it was like, oh,
It's
it's
a
the
pretty
worst.
high
Because
pain
college was a blur. We get it, Kathy. So much
I'm
alcohol.
just saying, I've had a high pain tolerance, so.
Oh, wow.
What?
I feel like
Whatever.
guys don't have as high of pain tolerance.
Oh, my
Yeah,
goodness.
You
okay.
guys get a cold and you're down for
Do you
the
see this?
week.
You know,
see
you
this
guys.
wound?
Wondering,
No,
are you-
That
we need to
wound right
talk
there?
about you guys. I'm sick this weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm like laying in bed,
Yeah.
not feeling well at all.
Yeah.
My whole body's sore, and Adelie's like, "Oh, you must have the man flu."
She did not say.
I'm like, "What is that?" She's like, "Well,
It's like a thing.
you guys kind of just baby things." I'm like, "No, I like feel
I am
awesome
so-
right now.
Take
This is
some
this is
ibuprofen and
not
keep
the
going,
move."
man.
I am so tired of the one-way sexism that happens in our culture.
I agree.
It's like tear down the
One
patriarchy.
way.
Tear down the
tear down the
sister
patriarchy,
the
but then,
matriarchy.
then all of a sudden, it's like it's fine for us to be a meme because we're
I
sick.
feel sorry for you guys that we're just treating you so badly. And for hundreds and hundreds of years, you guys have not had equal rights and not been treated fairly. So I'm sorry about that.
Thank you. I feel like that's a big step forward.
Wow. We forgive you. That's amazing. I feel better, honestly.
We will never make fun of your man colds
I feel
again
lighter.
after we birth out all your babies. That's fine.
Okay, well. That's,
Anyways, I think it's cool you're on an album. I wish you would have told me, but it's fine. Had to find out with the rest of America.
Yeah, so it is what it is. A lot of people are talking about Grammys and stuff already, and
Wow.
I feel like it's a little premature.
What if he goes to the K-Love Awards with Forrest
and not for
Wow. Oh, that'd be so painful.
K-Love, man. Why are you overlooking the BSO?
I know, exactly.
Seriously.
Probably
We're going to mention that every single
Show us
episode
some
until we
K-Love.
show up.
Yeah.
Hey, JP, I was wondering, Matthew 11, Jesus says, there's been no one born of a woman better than John the Baptist. What in the world does that mean?
Wow. No one born of a woman.
Was he playing favorites because it was his
Childbirth.
cousin?
I know, so that's what I was trying to make the childbirth connection.
There you
Hey,
go.
we want to give thanks to all the women for bringing us into this world, truly.
You're welcome.
Thank you. No one greater in the kingdom of heaven. No one greater in the kingdom of heaven. The least in the kingdom of heaven will be the greater than the greatest man born of a woman, is what he says. Yeah, and so I think John the Baptist lived. One, I think just to start with, like, what makes John the Baptist great. So when Mary comes to Elizabeth, John leaps in her womb, which is an amazing verse around the reality that life starts at conception, just to throw that out there. I think that then John lives this fully leveraged life where he's weird, right? He like wears camel hair and he eats locusts and he's in the wilderness and he's calling to people to repent, but he's fearless too. Like he'll go to the king and say, "Hey, you need to stop. Like you need to stop committing adultery. Like what you're doing is wrong." And then he says, like, you think I'm great? There's one that's coming that I'm not even worthy to tie his sandals. And so I think Jesus is saying that the greatest in the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than the greatest one born on earth. But I also don't think the kingdom of heaven, I think we think about that as that the kingdom of heaven is this one day thing that happens when we die, when Jesus says the kingdom is upon you. Man, I'm trying to figure out how to make this statement practical, but I would just say I think there is this Christian life out there that we're not even close to. And it's available to us. And in fact, you begin to think, well, what do I need to do to get it? I need to read the Bible every day. Do I need to go to church every day? Do I need to become a member? Do I need to serve? Do I need to be in a life group? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? And you say, and I would just say, all you need to do is change your perspective. Like you change your perspective right now. Like that life that's out there is fully attainable to us. And so I think we could talk about what that perspective change looks like. But let me just ask you guys, what do you think it looks like for the person who is living the fully leveraged Christian life? What does that look like?
Like, I think they live with joy.
Yeah.
They live with mission.
No fear, obedience. Like they're living different than the world's. Like
Totally.
the world is, the white big house and the picket fence and who knows what they're doing, honestly.
So if I said, like, right now, you could be totally free from the fear of man.
Yes.
And at peace. And you don't, and content. And there's nothing that you don't have that you want.
Yes.
And you're just grateful for what you have, and you're,
and like, no matter your circumstances, you're content, you're at peace.
And you go to the grocery store and you're just on mission and you're just like, you have a sense that God sent you to the grocery store and there's someone there that he wants you to share with, someone there whose day you're going to make, and you're like a superhero. You go into the grocery store and you like change someone's life just by the conversation that you have with them and the joy that you insert into their day. Like, that's amazing, right?
Yes.
Isn't that amazing? And it's like, that's available to us. Why don't we have that? What prevents us from having that?
So many things.
Like what?
Well, I'm just saying, I honestly think I've been wrestling with this lately. Like, Matt and I have had conversations where I'm like, I don't think...
We've all been talking about you and Matt. So when are they going to start living by faith?
Well, it's like in some areas I would say follow me as I follow Christ, and then there's like this big gap where I'm like, I would not.
What areas,
The
Kathy?
fear
She
of
watches TV.
I really don't. Okay, watch
I
The
know,
Chosen
yeah, you
last
said you
night.
don't watch
Okay, but I'm like, there's so many things where I'm like, yes, I feel like we're being obedient, we're doing what God wants us to do, and then it just feels like there's more to follow Jesus and being on mission that I feel like I miss out on because I get so caught up with, I don't know, my daily life and realities that it's hard to have that perspective switch. Like when I'm going to the grocery store, I'm like, how soon can I get in? How can I find what I need? How can I get out? Because I'm like, go, go, go. Got to get back to the kids, or I'm with all 4 kids at the store. So I think it's that perspective shift that I don't have.
Have you taken 4 kids to
For
the
sure.
store?
For sure I have.
I literally can't even imagine.
It's not easy or fun
It's
Do
amazing.
they all like sit in the cart?
sometimes. And then sometimes they don't.
Oh my God.
Sometimes they crawl out of it. I mean, it's a mess, man. So, yeah, I feel like there's this gap from where I am and where I want to be. And I don't know how
No.
to get there.
So describe where you want to be.
I want to be fearless. I want to be like on mission constantly. I want to like think every single person I'm interacting with, man, I have an opportunity to share Jesus with them or be obedient to whatever God's asked me
Excuse
to do
me.
in that
Sneezed.
moment. Do you guys feel like there's gaps in your faith?
No.
I don't.
Mm-mm.
We
Like
actually
as
were
you're
just talking about
you're
that.
talking, I'm like, man, what would that be like?
To be
Because like I don't
selfish
even. I'm
and-
trying to
and-
figure out. Like, man, like,
it
gosh.
feels like I'm a hypocrite in some ways.
Just
Amen.
I'm just like I'm just thinking
y'all
like,
understand
what's
that?
it like to be afraid and fear people? I don't even.
and like
Yeah, of course. Everybody. I'm joking. We're joking.
I'm like, man,
Everybody experience. I mean, I think nobody. It's like, who is that person that they're in? Like, why aren't we there? Like, we believe there's a God. We believe
Totally.
we're gonna die. We're gonna go to heaven.
believe
We're gonna
heaven's
be with Him
real,
forever and
hell's
ever and ever
real.
and ever. So you've got like 70 years on earth. It's like, why don't you just go around and share the gospel with everyone you see and spend time in the Word and like stop trying to make more money and drive a better car and live in a nicer
Right,
house and
right.
like, why can't you just be content with where you're at? Like, why? What prevents us from being that person?
sin.
like a belief that that a better car is going to make me happier, or like, what if I talk to someone about Jesus and I feel stupid, or like, or what if it's like not all true? Like, what if I give up my money and my needs are not provided for?
It's like, what if? Like,
Right.
answer the what if. Like, what if you give up your money and your needs are not provided for? What happens?
Then we'd be hungry, and
And then what happens?
Homeless.
yeah, then we're homeless, I guess.
Okay, so you're homeless and hungry, and what happens?
You
Then,
could.
then my kids are really sad, and my wife is like, "Man, I married a loser."
What? And then what happens? And then what?
You die.
And then it rains, and I'm really soggy.
And
And
then you die. I mean, if you don't eat, you die. It's like that.
Right,
That's
that's
like.
one.
It's like it's so weird that we're like, we might starve to death. Like, that's where this goes.
Right.
Like, that's not real.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's really.
hey, listen,
like,
with Kathy in my life group, she ain't providing for squat.
like
So
let's just say, let's
I
say
have
there's,
fed you multiple
let's say
times.
there's 1 million people listening to us.
yeah,
I mean, 999,999 of those people don't have to ever worry about starving to death.
yeah.
I mean, just the fact that you've got a $900 phone in your pocket, or you're driving down the road in a vehicle, you're in the gym with AirPods in, right? Like, starving to death is not on the purview. Like, it's not a reality, and yet that's where it goes for us. And then if you starve to death, you stand before God and you're like, "Hey God, I'm here. I starved to death. I know you said I wouldn't, but somehow I slipped through the cracks. I know I said I've never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread. I know you said that you would take care of the birds of the air and the flowers of the field, and somehow I slipped through the cracks and I starved to death. My hunch is he's going to make good on that, like in heaven, like forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, if you starve to death. But is that really what we're afraid of, like starving to death? Like, who's ran that experiment and like given all of their stuff? And I don't think it's about giving everything away.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's poverty gospel.
Yeah.
I think it's about leveraging what you have. Can you have a big house? Yes, you just can't have one with empty bedrooms. You know, it's like every empty bedroom is an indictment. You have to leverage what you have for this. Can you have a lake house? Sure. If you use it for ministry purposes. If it just sits vacant, then it's a waste of resources and it's rotting. Rust and moth will destroy it. I think you have to run every decision through the lens of what is the kingdom return I can get on this.
What do you mean by that?
What I just said. It's like, if you have $1 million and you're like, all right, I have $1 million, I can give it away to missions, I can buy a bunch of clothes, I can buy a house and a car, I can put it in the bank. What do I want to do? And let's just say you say, well, I'm going to buy a house and a car. It's like, great. Well, now you have a responsibility to use that house and car for ministry. So you're either stewarding $1 million or you're stewarding a house and a car. It's all stewardship. It's all trying to get a kingdom return on what you have, because your life is short and you want to use it for the sake of the kingdom. We're going to die and we're going to be somewhere forever, forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, either in hell, separated from God, where there's nothing good at all, there's nothing remotely joyful, nothing, no semblance of laughter, or in the presence of God, where the most joyful moment we've ever experienced on earth is the floor of the joy that we experience there. And we're going to be there forever and ever and ever and ever. And every moment that we experience here is making a deposit. Is either it's getting lost in the world, like being sucked into the vortex and the vacuum of nothingness, or we're taking that moment and we're investing that moment in eternity, where we will enjoy it in the presence of Jesus forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So there's no wasted moments except for moments that you spend solely on earth, like solely for the purpose of earth.
Yes, living under like the kingdom of right now and right here, rather than the kingdom of heaven.
If you get a snow cone, enjoy the snow cone to the glory of God, and as an act of worship. Or the moment is lost forever and ever and ever, and you forget the snow cone, and it is only empty calories.
Yeah.
You asked a question to our staff recently that I've been thinking about ever since then. You were like, hey, what would you do if you knew God was real? Like 100% sure. Like, God's real. He's in heaven. Jesus lived. Jesus died. Jesus rose again. Like, you know that. Yeah. What would you do next?
Yeah.
I feel like so much of our life is not defined by that, whatever that thing would be.
You know where it says, like, it's James, like the person who doubts is like the like the one tossed to and fro by the waves.
Yeah.
I always thought that meant like doubt God, right? So it's like, oh, if I doubt, then I'm like tossed to and fro. I was thinking about this a little more in depth recently, and it's like, well, if I doubt God, then I really doubt my purpose, and if I doubt my purpose, then I go through life aimlessly.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, oh, let me try this,
good.
let me try that, let me try this, let me try that, let me just try to make as much money as possible so I can enjoy my life. The reality is most Christians live like they're atheists. Like, most Christians they're practicing atheists. They're like, I want as much comfort here as I possibly can, which is not a Christian biblical worldview.
Right.
A Christian biblical worldview is one of leverage. It's one of stewardship. It's one of everything that I have that God entrusts to me is a responsibility to use that thing for His glory. So you don't sit here and say, I want more money, because you view money as a responsibility. You might be like, I want less money. I want less. So it's like, if you, and what the scripture says is you're only going to be held responsible to the talents that He gave you. Luke 12, Matthew 25. So if He gave you 2 talents, He's only going to measure your work based on the 2 talents that He gave you. You have to use the 2 talents. That's good news. But if He gave you 10 talents, then you have an expectation on you for a 10 talent return. That's bad news. It's like, okay, so however many talents I have, I need to identify the gifts that God has entrusted to me for His glory and use them. That's the fully leveraged life. That's what John the Baptist did. He's like, hey, this other guy's coming. I'm using everything that I have to tell you about the one who's coming. That's why he was great. The guy who Jesus said was the greatest man ever lived was a homeless dude in the wilderness.
So if we are to have a fully leveraged life, we are to be weird.
For sure weird.
Do you guys feel like you're weird?
I feel weird.
Well,
No, I do. I mean, I feel like a big old weirdo.
like, I think you are weird, and I'm also like, you're cool, you know?
Yeah.
And you have a pretty house, and I mean, you use things well. I'm just saying, like, I think I can
wow.
really
The
get tripped
judgment.
up on that. No, gosh,
Dang. I'm materialistic.
no. I don't know how to be John the Baptist weird, you know?
Yeah.
I just feel like a fully leveraged life, that feels exhausting to think, okay, everything that I have has to be leveraged for God. So it's like I wake
And
up,
every
oh my
moment,
God,
It's like-
too.
my house is for God. My job needs to be for God. These relationships, it's like,
Like, do you think it's more exhausting or like more or less exhausting? I think it's less exhausting.
Here's the deal.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to speak to that. Like, when there's a moment where I don't share the gospel and I actually feel like God was really like, hey, do this, or I'm disobedient, or I miss out, that feeling of like missing out weighs on me.
Yeah.
Like,
So it's like, why don't we just
hard.
share the gospel with every person we see?
Right.
It's just like that way, you know. It's like I think if you're really free from the approval of others, like you
Yes.
don't care what people think,
Yes.
and I think that was true of John the Baptist. Then it's like this amazing so like you talked about the house, right? So we have to steward the house. So if I'm going to build a house
Yeah.
that's relatively big, right? I mean, it's not huge, but it's a nice house in the suburbs, if you will, nice for us anyways. Then it's like, okay, I'm going to take God's money and I'm going to invest it in that resource. Then I've got to use
it's
it
weird
for
that the
kingdom.
driveway's gold, but
Whatever. It's not gold. I've got to use it. It's actually cracked right now. I've got to use it for kingdom purposes. And so like this guy wanted to have a conversation, and I'm like, just come by anytime. And people aren't used to that.
You really say that a
They're
lot,
like,
bro.
well, what time? I'm like, anytime. I mean, if I'm not there, you know, we'll figure it out. But just come by. And it's like, when do we stop just like knocking on people's doors?
Yeah.
Like now, the only people that knock on the doors are like salesmen,
Yes.
Jehovah's Witness, and the mailman.
man,
It's like, dude, knock on the door and say, hey, how are y'all doing? And like, I love that he did. He just knocked. He was like, hey, and I was like, come in. And it's like, I think that's like the leverage, like that's like using the house, like sit down at the table and let's have the conversation.
And even recognizing
And he's
your
like, I'm
time
sorry
isn't
that
your
I'm sorry
time.
that you're interrupting.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I'm interrupting you. It's like, what, interrupting what?
that's
What are
so
you
hard.
interrupting?
Like, what
am I?
if what God has for us is the interruption?
Yeah.
And actually, I think it's probably
Because if Kathy showed up one day, knocked on my door,
Gosh,
was like,
you'd be
hey,
so
let's go.
mad.
I'd be like, gosh,
get out of
dang it,
here.
I'm-
And we're actually friends. Like, what if someone that you're not even kind of friends with knocked on the door? Nate would be like,
I love it. But you know, so maybe that's personality. But I think it is a lot of it is even personality is driven by perspective and worldview.
Yeah.
And if you're in this place where you're like, man, I just want to lose, like Jesus says, whoever loses their life for my sake finds it.
Yeah.
Are you ever crippled by like, I'm not doing enough for God?
Do you know what he said to Peter in Luke 18? He said, I tell you that no one who's given up, you know, family or anything for my sake will fail to receive 100 times as much.
Wow.
So he takes it, he multiplies it. Like, what if we can just take Jesus at his word?
Yeah.
So I think like what you're talking about is that, oh, I have to do all these things
Yeah.
mindset. I'm not
like a
talking
chore
about
list.
having to do all these things. I'm talking about all I have to do is lose my life. Like, that's all. Like, it's
Yeah.
one thing. Like, I just have to see life through the perspective of living it for the kingdom of God.
It's
And
one
more
thing,
get to
and you
than
have
have to.
multiple opportunities a day to do it,
Yeah.
to get to lose your life multiple times a day.
It's just like, man, my life is not mine.
Yeah.
Like, for parents, like, that's the greatest parenting
Totally.
advice I would say is like, man, show your kids that a trip to the grocery store is a mission trip, that God sovereignly had you there at the grocery store today for a purpose. And like, show them that. Don't compartmentalize church. Don't compartmentalize faith. Like, we think about time with God. So it's like, I wake up and I spent time with God. And then I went to the gym, and then I went to work, and I sat in a meeting, and then after the meeting I went home and I had dinner. And, you know, it's like, what if all of that was time with God?
Right. That's how it's supposed to
You
be.
know, it's like
Yeah.
you prayed, and that was
Yes.
time with God, and you read the Bible, and that was time with
Right.
God, and then you went to the gym, and that was time with God,
Yes.
and then you sat in the conference room, and that was time with God, and then you went home and you
So
had
good.
dinner, and that was time with God. And what was
Yes.
all time with God?
Yeah. Do you ever worry that you're not doing enough? Like, I know you're a pastor and everything, but like, do you ever worry like, man, my life is not fully leveraged for God?
I concern myself with making poor decisions, like not being a good steward of God's resources, and I'm going on a vacation this week, and I'm thinking, man, I don't want to waste it.
Yeah.
And so I think about that, like I don't want to waste the vacation, and so how do I go in it with the right perspective and the right attitude? But it's like if you're out there and you think, well, I want money and I want success and I want, this, you want all of those things because you really think they're going to bring happiness. So what if you could have happiness without any of those things? And then what if you knew right now that having those things was actually going to bring sadness, despair, and depression? So really, ultimately, what we want is we want to feel good. Like, we just want to feel good.
Feel comfortable.
And like you'll never feel better than when you're in a right relationship with God, surrendered to His Spirit. That's like that whole like camp high. Like if you
can have that all the time.
If you could bottle or make that a pill that people could take, the camp high, the Christian camp high, I mean, you would make billions of dollars because everybody wants that camp high all the time. And it's like the most solid Christian, they're kind of walking around and they just have the most faith. They're like the one that believes that God is real the most.
Yeah. I mean, do you feel like you can change your life now?
Well, I don't think I can. I think like what I'm talking about, this like gap is only fixable by God and obedience. So like,
and community too.
Well, that's not a true story. Matt and I were really struggling with like, we both struggle with fear of man, and it's hard to be married to someone who has that same like blind spot kind of, or not blind spot, we're aware of it, but that same struggle because we're not helping each other there. And so one night we just talked about it, we confessed it to each other, and we just prayed and we said, God, would you please help us? The next night we actually had dinner with the Coes, these friends of ours who don't have that. They faithfully share the gospel all the time, and we like got to talk to them about sharing our faith. We got encouragement, we got like prayer for it, all this stuff. And then the next morning I was at the park and I had this like thing take over me where I was like, what if I can share the gospel right now while I'm at the park with 2 of my kids? And I did. And I got to have a great conversation with a Jehovah's Witness and didn't really go anywhere, but I was obedient, and the feeling I felt the rest of that day was that camp high. Like I was on cloud 9 because an area that I really struggle in, like sought prayer, sought community for, and then was just obedient the next time I had the opportunity.
So why did you just say, oh, you talk?
Well, I was just saying, I don't think that's why. I don't think it was why the camp high. I think it's because like you were living out your purpose. So it wasn't like, oh, I was obedient and so now I feel good because I was obedient.
Well,
I think it was like, no, you were living.
Like,
and so you feel alive when you're living. Like it's just like, it's the same thing I hear on all the mission trips I've been on. People will come, it's the same phrase. I've never felt so alive. I'm like, for the first time in your life, you are living as you're living the life God intended you to live. That's why you feel that way.
Why did you say you don't feel like you can change then? Because you just did.
Well, I'm just saying, like, I think it is a work that God is doing in me. I think it's constant confession. I think it is something I can do. Like, I can take that act of obedience and I can confess when I don't. But I think God is just, like, kind of have to fix that gap in me, too.
Yeah.
So it's when we partner with Him, but He's the one who does the real work.
Yeah.
I don't know if that...
Yeah, so we're just basically today, we're just going to ask you guys to pray for Kathy.
Seriously.
And and pray for your boy, man. Don't pray for Nate. Pray.
We want to live this life that God has for us, this abundant life. And I felt it in that moment. I felt it in moments like that. And we want that for you guys.
100%.
Yeah, this is a total sidetrack, but someone emailed yesterday to Becoming Something. They said, Dear JP and Kathy, and then in parentheses, or Nate.
No,
I'm like, it's like, I really want these two to listen, but
they know you're not in.
If Nate
they're
reads
onto
it,
you, dude.
whatever.
They know
like,
you got one. He's got 1 foot in. He's a 2%er.
Oh my God.
I'm like, what do you mean, or Nate? Like,
he's missed a few episodes lately. What can we say?
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Gosh.
All right, guys, live a leveraged life.
That's good.
We gotta go. We love you a lot. Love you a lot. That came out weird. Love you a lot. Love you a lot. Love you a lot.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Becoming Something, where we promise to keep the conversation honest and real for young adults in their 20s and 30s. Every moment we live is training for a future moment, and that's why we do this podcast, because we want you to be prepared for everything that life is going to throw at you. Our hope with this podcast is that it would help you become all that God desires you to be. To find out more, visit becomingsomething.com.